This is BBC London 94.9. Saturday night with Sonny and Shay.
The time is 8:13 and we mentioned earlier on that we are discussing and looking at homelessness this week in London. Now, we went out to Waterloo Bridge earlier on in the week and we had an opportunity to do something that, when I think about it, I've never actually done before.
Yeah, because what we do at the end of the show, when we have some extra food, and we do bring some food in, and there's some homeless people in and around the BBC studios, and normally outside around London as well also. So what we thought we would do is we normally give out food. And when we went to give out food and other things on the streets of London, we were quite taken aback by some of the people that we met and the stories that we heard. And it's sort of, my opinion sort of split into two ways about what we experienced. Is that I
completely agree with that. So we were out on the streets of London talking to the homeless and finding out what I would say is actually a very eye-opening experience. We went out with an organisation called the Sock Mob, who give out socks and food to people who are sleeping rough. And there was a particular man that we met. His name's John, and now he was stood outside Waterloo Station, and he told us a little bit about his experiences of how he ended up on the streets. And this is what he had to say.
I've been out nearly 9 months now. I'm 36 years of age. I was married for 16 years. I've got a 16-year-old daughter. I used to have two pubs, one in Luton, one in North London. My mother-in-law had HIV and it turned into full-blown AIDS. So when it got too much, I had to give up the pub in Luton and come back to London to help my wife look after my mother-in-law. Because she had my daughter to look after. Anyway, I had a lot of things got bad for me, and I lost a lot. I had the nervous breakdown, I lost a lot of weight, and my doctor put me on dihydrocodone, which is morphine. Yeah, I got addicted to them, and then he took me off them. And then I went to Scotland to see my mum for 4 days, and I come back with a friend, and he introduced me to heroin. It took all the pains away and everything.
I was just going to say, when you say friend, a good friend or bad friend?
No, he slept with my wife and introduced me to heroin.
Can I ask you, how have you got in contact with your family in the last 9 months, or have they tried to find you?
18 years ago, my brother David died, of a drug overdose, And then my dad died of alcohol poisoning, and then my brother Gerard died of cirrhosis of the liver, and then my brother John was drunk one morning, only 7-8 months ago, down by the embankment. He was walking his dog and he was showing off walking along the river, but the tide was out and he fell onto the rocks. He died as well, and I've just been diagnosed with chronic liver disease as well. So it might be something that runs in the family, but 5 months ago my doctor, my consultant, he gave me 12 months to live. Right. And I haven't changed my ways really, do you know what I mean?
Trying? You're on the way?
Well, I'm making my appointments, yeah.
You got to, haven't you?
At least you're taking the steps to the right road.
Yeah. Well, I need to, because when I left Glasgow when I was 16 to come to London, everything was rosy in the garden. Everybody told me the pavement was paved with gold and all that. Yeah. And I come down here and I had to graft away. I landed in King's Cross, and the girl I was supposed to meet never turned up. So I was on my own. I met another girl 2 weeks later, and that was the girl I married. So I moved in with her sister, met her mum and all that. She gave me a chance and blah blah, and then just things happen. The worst mistake that I've ever made is brought my so-called friend from Glasgow to London.
But at least you're, as you say, you're looking at what was wrong, and you're looking at making it right now.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So look, I'm here with the Sock Mob, and obviously, as you can see, she's got something that she'd like to give you.
Yeah, we go around. I mean, I know Hazel, and we just go around chatting to people that are out and just bring all sorts of bits and bobs. So I've got all sorts of goodies. Have you got room to? Got a granola bar?
Yeah, I've got my bag.
Socks,
Oh, thank you so much, guys.
Hopefully it helps.
Oh, that's so good. That will help and all.
Yeah.
The place I sleep now, because I beg under the tunnel. Right. That's my spot. and it's usually a Friday and a Saturday night I make enough money, because there's a place in Peckham that will take me and the dog. It's a bed and breakfast, yeah, and it's £18 a night, and it's usually a Friday and Saturday that I get it. Sometimes the guy will say to me, like on a Wednesday if it's really bad weather, Dave, give me it back at the weekend.
How did you first find it when being on the streets, and as you say, you know, you're begging now? I mean, are people nice to you, or do you get a lot of stick?
No, the worst thing that happened to me, well, can I just show you something?
Of course.
The worst thing that happened to me, I wear a bulletproof vest now, yeah?
Right.
And I got stabbed through my heart, yeah? That's the worst thing that happened to me. When I was sleeping, I've been urinated on, spat on, my
People
dog
get set
kicked.
fire, don't they? All sorts.
So, yeah, my dog kicked. I've had my blanket set on fire. Molly, my dog, I've been offered like £100 for her. I wouldn't give her up for nothing in the world.
See, now the story at the end right there, being urinated on, his dog getting kicked, him being you actually saw the wounds. I
saw John's wound. So that was John talking about, I guess, pretty much his experience sleeping rough in London. And yeah, he took off his he had a bulletproof vest on, and he had quite a few bags with him, you know, with his clothes in his bags. So I held his bags and he took his vest off and he showed me, you know, this old wound, and he was just pretty much talking about what he's been through in the last couple of months. See,
now that's what I'm thinking now. I'm conflicted now by hearing that story. This is where I was saying my perception sort of like swavered left and right, and I was moved by most of the people I met there. But now he's breaking the law. He's taking drugs. Okay, so straight away there, I start thinking, well, you're not in a good place as it is. Why are you taking drugs and then not bettering yourself, or you're not even bettering yourself, sorry, why don't you get out of that problem and then deal with the next problem? Do you know what I mean? So I had these kind of questions as well, but he was not in a position where he could probably answer me more coherently.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So this is where I was swaying, but there's so many people out there that are doing positive stuff as well. Now,
you're absolutely right. I was going to say, just to add to that, those are the questions I kind of wanted to ask, but I was very lucky to not be stood there by myself, and I had the sock mob, you know, with me. And joining us in the studio now, we have Lydia and Matthew, who came out with us. And I guess maybe, you know, you with the sock mob do actually do this, where you go out, you meet the homeless, you will give them socks, you know, you will give them food. It's a question that arises, I think, for a lot of people. How much sympathy can you have for someone when they're telling you that they're doing, you know, these illegal acts? What are your thoughts, Lydia?
Well, I would say that it's a very difficult question, and I think it's a very individual thing as well. Each person's story is very different. The reasons why they came to be where they are very different. So it's very difficult to make a generalisation. But when people tell me stories of how they got to where they are and why they're doing what they're doing, I always think that being on the streets is such a dangerous, scary place to be. And if people have no other source of comfort or solace, and if they're lonely and they're invisible and they feel neglected by the general public, if they have no interaction, then it could be seen as maybe a natural side effect that they would turn to other sources for comfort, which unfortunately can be a bit self-destructive sometimes. And that's partly why we at the SOC will do what we do, which is offer companionship to kind of counteract people's loneliness, rather than just give stuff, as a way of kind of giving them something else to turn to.
This is what we found when we walked up to them. Giving just was one element of it, but just giving that person a moment of your time was more encouraging, and that was, they almost felt like human. I mean, the perception of homeless people and sleeping rough, how is that perceived in the wider, let's say, community of London?
Well, from
your experience and what you hear from the streets, because you have interaction with the homeless and people who are sleeping rough more than me and Shay do. I mean, yesterday was one of our this week was the first time that we actually interacted that closely.
Well, in terms of the wider public, I see and I hear a lot of kindness, a lot of willingness to speak to the homeless and engage and understand what goes on, but people don't know how, and they're scared of the unknown. And there's also this fear of being touched by something that might be a bit dangerous, might be a bit subversive, fear of being, fear of contagion almost. And I think that's why people don't want to interact.
I don't know if I can say this, but I'll be honest, when John was giving me his bag, I did, without even realising it, did double take as to whether or not I should hold his bag. Don't ask me why, but I literally, his dog was there, and the dog's very close to me, and he gave me the bag to hold, and I took a second, I hesitated, and I thought, and afterwards I did think to myself, why am I hesitating? Am I thinking he's dirty because he's been on the streets, or am I thinking I'm going to catch something? Matthew, you yourself have have slept rough. So what do you think about some of the things that John was talking about?
I think he has a fair number of points. In terms of the drugs thing, just very quickly, I think it's quite rare of society to judge someone who's sleeping under the stars for taking drugs. There is no doubt that when you are homeless, sleeping rough, that you're there possibly because you have personal issues, more than probable that you have, and you want to hide away from things anyway. So a way of escapism is through alcohol or drugs. So to judge a person and say it's illegal to take drugs, it's illegal to beg, therefore it's heinous that people. Well, okay, I think it's morally wrong, the naked hatred that I've seen in people's faces when they walk past me, as someone who's sleeping rough, as a part-time big issue vendor at one point in my life, and just I have begged in my life. I have done it, and I have to say the first time I begged, I burst out laughing.
So when you ended up on the streets yourself, I mean, explain to us how you even got to that stage, and just give me a bit of a history. I don't know where you're from, what you do. Just give us a little bit of history of.
Okay,
if you're comfortable talking about that.
Yeah,
that's okay?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll tell you what I'm prepared to tell you.
Okay.
I'm 40. I've had a very privileged upbringing. I went to a posh school, some would call it. For 10 years, I had parents that were extremely nice and still are, and gave me every chance that I could ever need. My issue my entire life has been gambling, and I've had very good jobs, I've had home, and I lost all that through gambling. And that actually is what put me on the street. I've had help from my family, have supported me my entire life as much as they could. But I've done some very bad things to them. I've done very bad things to a number of people. So that's really what put me on the street. Was my gambling was bigger than my desire to be myself. And I think a lot of homeless people, it is a personal issue within their lives that has led them there. And in a way, it's a runaway, it's a hideaway. And lots of people come to London.
Yes, that's true.
It's the centre of the world, as far as I'm concerned. But when it comes down to before you became homeless, when you had those privileged lifestyle that you have a home, you had cars, and you had a really good job, I presume. So what was your perception of homelessness and people sleeping rough at that time? Do you remember walking past them? Were they invisible people, or were they someone that you paid attention to?
To my shame, I grew up. My political awareness was under Mrs. Thatcher.
Right. Okay. The concept.
So it was very right wing. I remember when the miners were striking, as a sort of 15, 16-year-old boy, thinking, "Crush the miners, they're wrong. Maggie, she's got it right." And that would go through. I would come to London at 18, playing rugby with my fellow teammates, and we would see homeless people, and you would just regard them as. Or disregard them. Actually, it was a literal disregard that they were a person. Okay. That you wouldn't even accept that.
So if you hear people talking about the homeless in that manner, you are not foreign to that way of thinking because of the life that you had. And from your experiences, like I read some statistic that you're only 4 checks away from the streets, and that is not something that I didn't even comprehend that until I was walking around the streets with you, the sock mob, and yourself when we went out to London Waterloo Station, in fact. And so when you're on the streets, what kind of experiences did you encounter that made you think, oh, where are we?